A little bit about Mark's background. He's a PMP, holds a master's degree in environmental science from UTSA. And I do want to highlight the fact that he is a retired U.S. Army Reserve officer, and he has served in Afghanistan during Operation Enduring Freedom. I'll turn this over to Mark. If there are any questions during the presentation, I'd like to offer, you can put it in chat and we can ask it during the presentation, or if you prefer, just hold your questions until the end. So with that, Mark, over to you.
Well, thank you, Steve. Thanks, everyone. And thank you for that good introduction. And I'll move forward with my presentation here. If we can go to my first slide. There it is. Well, that's my name. You already know my name. And I'll talk a bit about what we do in project controls and SAWS engineering as we go through the presentation. So first a bit of background about SAWS, the San Antonio water system. There we go. We're one of the nation's largest municipally owned utilities. We are owned by the city of San Antonio. However, we do have our own board of trustees, and we do function semi-independently, but again, we're owned by the city, and we serve most of the city and a large portion of Bexar County. You can see our service area there on the map on the right. It does extend out into some of the neighboring counties a bit. And we serve 1.9 million people in the San Antonio metropolitan area. Our annual budget, capital budget, and O&M budget and everything is $929 million. So we're pushing $1 billion there. Our capital improvements plan over the next 5 years is $2.6 billion. So that's a lot of infrastructure, both water and sewer. And we execute about an average of right now about $515 million per year. So it's a lot of money, a lot of projects going out. And we do that with just almost 1,800 employees, but we also rely on engineers and contractors and a lot of people to help us with that. So it's not just me and my 1,774 colleagues that do that capital improvements program. We definitely need support from the city, and a lot of people on this call, I'm sure, have either worked with us, or I'm sure some of you would like to. So at the end, I'll tell you how you can get involved and help us out. Move on. There we go. A little bit more about our infrastructure. We have 13,000 miles of pipe. That's water and sewer pipe. 182 wells, mostly in the Edwards Aquifer. 117 water storage tanks. Some of them are elevated, some of them are on the ground. And if you drive around, you won't go very far on any of our streets or highways without seeing one of our water tanks. There's 154 lift stations, and those, most of our system runs north to south downhill towards our treatment plants. And you see the Stephen M. Klaus treatment plant on the right down at the very southern tip of Bexar County. But the lift stations, when there's a rise in the pipe or we need to go around or over something, we put in a sewer lift station, and that keeps the wastewater flowing downhill. There's 3 large treatment plants. I mentioned the one on the right is Klaus, formerly known as Dos Rios. And we also have one at a Leon Creek and a Medio Creek treatment plant. And those take care of all the wastewater from the all 1.9 million people. Project controls, that's my team I'm on. We live in engineering and construction. We focus on scope, schedule, and budget. In other words, keep projects moving. We attain and sustain a high level of project success by focusing on those project schedules and budget, maintaining the scope to try to minimize scope creep, stumbling over my words there, and meeting our stakeholder expectations. Our stakeholders are both in the organization with our operations staff and then outside. The city of San Antonio, indeed, every citizen that we serve is one of our stakeholders. We do leverage technology quite a bit. Since I think 2012, implemented and used constantly our contract and project management system, CPMS, that we have in their contracts. We can quickly determine the status, asset information on each and every piece of sewer pipe in our system to meet our EPA consent decree. And we also use Primavera P6, a project schedule that interfaces with some of our other software, namely Tableau. We have a Tableau dashboard and helps us to visualize through pretty cool charts and graphs where we're at on any given project or any piece of sewer main in our system. So we heavily use technology. You know, it's and I'll speak to my team also, project controls, and most of engineering, and indeed most of the office staff at SAS. We've been working remotely for over a year now, and that'll likely continue through likely the end of May, maybe into June, maybe longer. We don't know. We have an ongoing study to focus on that. But we've been doing our jobs for the most part remotely, like I am right now in my home office for over a year now. And technology, we could not have done that without technology. So we definitely make full use of every piece of technology that we have. So the consent decree, I mentioned that. I'm sure you've heard of it before. It's a consent decree with the EPA. We're well over halfway through now at 10 years. We've, in most cases, repeatedly inspected our entire sewer system, all the pipes, televised them, rehabbed a lot of them, a lot more of them, we track all that through the technological solutions that I just mentioned there. 10-year requirement, I think we're in year 6 or 7 now, so we're marching right through it. Both condition and capacity projects. Condition meaning pipe that's just old, nothing lasts forever, and especially sewer pipes, and then capacity pipes that were either old or undersized, and due to growth in the system, we have to oversize those pipes, and all that's to really, the goal of all of it is to eliminate sanitary sewer overflows, and we've done a good job of that, and we will continue doing that beyond the consent decree even. So we're already setting the stage and have projects in the long-term capital improvements plan to maintain all of that. So the timeline, as you saw, it started in our first full year was 2013. In 2025, we see it winding down. However, as I mentioned, the capacity and condition remedial measures projects will be finished by that. But the CMOM, which, if I can recall, it's condition, maintenance, operations, and management. That will continue well into the future. So, if I may go on. Okay, one of our big projects right now, you may have heard of this. It's the most costly and complex sewer pipeline project in our history. We have over 5 miles of up to 140-inch gravity sewer main, a depth up to 140 feet. If you notice the graphic on the right, it goes around Lackland Air Force Base, along Highway 90, down Southwest Military, and ends up south of the base down there. And we tried going through the base. It was obviously, it's always difficult when you're going through a military base, especially on with an active runway. So we finally worked up a solution with a lot of help at very high levels in the federal government to work up a solution to go around the base. The green dots are tunnels where they have bored tunnel shafts down up to 140 feet to work on the pipe down that low, because obviously you can't, and you wouldn't want to dig 140 feet down a trench. So they're doing tunneling and giant tunneling boring machines, and we are over 30% done on that project. We're ahead of schedule, so that is a really good thing, and we expect that progress to continue and get it done within that 3-year construction duration. I didn't mention, but you can see on the slides, $167 million project. There's some pictures. You can see In the upper left, that's one of the tunnel shafts. That one doesn't look as deep, but some of them are. On the lower left, you can see one of the tunnel boring machines. And then some other cool pictures with the railroad tracks underneath in those sewer pipes where we're installing the new sewer pipe. And people standing by one of the, obviously in that center right picture, it's very large tunnel boring machine. That guy in the foreground is our Chief Operating Officer, Steve Klaus. He's my height, if not a little taller, at 6 feet. So you can see the TBM is probably a good 10-foot diameter machine. Well, let's see, let's move on. And okay, some more projects. I see there's some questions coming in, and I'll take a moment here and answer those. RIP, Water Resources Integration Pipeline Phase 2. That one went all the way around the west side of the city to bring water up from one of our production plants down there on the south end, and also down there is our aquifer storage and recovery site to bring water up to some pump stations on the west side and up there by near Anderson Pump Station, up there close to on the northwest side to feed a very rapidly growing part of the city. There was 16 miles of steel, high pressure rated pipe at $44 million cost, and then a couple of pump stations that we built for $27 million. So again, a large project. If the moderators don't mind, I'll quickly answer a couple of the questions. So it looks like how much of the network, I think that's the sewer main, still needs to be rehabbed. Well, I don't have a quick answer on the top of my head, but we are over halfway. And again, that project will continue. So we are making great project. The EPA has even publicly congratulated us on a really good program to meet the demands of the consent decree. So how often do sanitary sewer overflows occur in San Antonio? Well, right now, since it's been so dry, not very often. Typically rain will cause one. Obviously blocked pipes or poor condition pipes will cause one, but normally most of the time with low flows, they don't occur very often. I don't have numbers on the top of my head, but I can tell you that the incident has come dramatically down in the past few years. So if you look at our website, we do post when one occurs. We're required to by law, so because it's obviously needs to be public information. What do we do with all the dirt from the tunnels? I don't know for sure, but a lot of it, since it's not if it's not contaminated, they truck it away. I don't know where, but if it is contaminated, then obviously we have to take special precautions with that. One more quick question, then I'll move on. Do you manage these projects with in-house or outsourced staff? Well, both. We have probably close to 100 engineers, both professional engineers licensed, and then engineers in training and graduate engineers in engineering, and then our inspection staff. They manage the projects most closely by they're out there construction inspections, monitoring the contractors as they do their work. Obviously, we hire a lot of contractors to actually do the projects. They're often very, very large projects, as you can see from some of the numbers I've showed you. And then also design engineers. We put out most of our large and complex projects to design engineers to design them for us. And then again, we monitor as it goes to construction. So another exciting project that is just now in its early, well, the pilot is just begun, is advanced meter infrastructure. What that is, it's a automated metering of your water usage. And we are well into the design, the pilot stage of that, with 2,500 customers in 3 areas around the town to test the system reliability, usability. What it'll give us eventually is, for every customer, you can look at real-time water usage, and it should alert you if you have a leak. It'll help us track our water usage around town, where we need it, where we need to perhaps increase it or add infrastructure. And it'll be pretty neat when it works, or when it's fully operational, to piggyback off of the CPS Energy wireless network. So we didn't have to go build our own wireless network. It will give us, terabytes, huge amounts of data. So I anticipate that we'll probably either cross-train or hire new staff to manage some of that data, to make sense of it. And I'm pretty excited about that project, and it's funded for construction in 2022 at this time too. So we will see that coming out in next year. Okay, there we go. The wastewater master plan. I mentioned our 3 treatment plants, and you can see them in green there. The Salado Creek is a decommissioned plant. However, we do still own that land. At the present time, there's not much infrastructure there. But the other 3, the operational, are Dos Rios, actually named Stephen M. Klaus now, and Leon Creek and Medio Creek on the far west side. That master plan is to evaluate the existing conditions, all the infrastructure on all 3 of those treatment plants. We call them water recycling centers. And it'll give us a good, solid capital improvement plan for the next 20 years, which I can tell you from putting together our capital improvements plan for many years, we really need that to have some better stability and make sure that our treatment plants stay, their infrastructure there stays well maintained and operational. For instance, Dos Rios or Klaus treatment plant, our largest one, is about probably 25 years old. And obviously, infrastructure needs to be maintained over time to continue to leverage technology like SCADA systems. And that plant averages about 80 million gallons a day of wastewater. So you really need some very robust infrastructure to treat all that and make sure that it meets all the environmental standards. So the master plan, we expect it to be finalized later this year. Hopefully it'll provide some input for our capital improvements plan for next year and the following 20 years after this year. And we don't just do wastewater, we do water also. This program is actually in its final stages now. We're actually implementing some of the projects that came out of it. And it was to do a water main rehabilitation, risk-based rolling 5-year capital improvements plan. We looked at city streets. Well, our consultant looked at city water mains and throughout the system and said which ones are the highest risk for failure. And they came out with some good projects that we actually have. We're designing some of them right now. We'll see a lot of them go to construction in the next year and the following years. This is a pretty nice. I saw some of the presentations and looked at some of the models they built that used machine learning and field condition assessment, came out with useful life calculations. It considered triple bottom line of social, economic, and environmental. It gave us a risk score, the likelihood of failure times the consequence of failure times the redundancy, came up with a good quantitative risk score. And they used some cool software by Innovise called Inflow Asset Planner to come up with that. And that program is now giving us a really solid water main rehabilitation capital improvements program. So again, technology helping us identify the highest risk water mains in our system. And now we have a good program to implement in our capital improvements program to rehab those water mains. Okay, so here's what I know you all want to see. Dollars. That's our capital improvements program 2021 through 2025. It averages about $515 million. We're looking at some big years. 2020 was actually 600 million. Some of these, I think, we couldn't get Excel to put the totals at the bottom of the chart, but 2022 is right now sitting at 574 million. And if you'll jump forward a slide, I'll show you 2021, the year we're in right now that we're executing. That was 541 million, so lots of money. most of it construction with 486 million, and then about $20 million of design, and 70% replacement of old aging water mains and other infrastructure, and then 30% growth to meet a rapidly growing city. Obviously, wastewater, 326 million to meet the demands of our consent decree. Water, 182 million for pipes and pumps and tanks, and then water resources. That was like the water resources integration program and other water resources project. That's new water supplies, 33 million. So I'll go through each of those in some high level detail and some specific on each projects. Water delivery pipelines, that's obviously water pipes, 62 million. Facilities, about 79 million, that's pumps and tanks. And then governmental replacements, we do about 28 million along with the city, TxDOT, some Bexar County every year. So our infrastructure program is tightly integrated with the local and state governments. The roadways and all that they maintain. Here's a few projects. Turtle Creek, number 3, tank and main, $35 million tank and water main. That feeds the medical center. Obviously a very important area to the citizens here, to make sure that we give them adequate water supplies. We are looking at removing chlorine disinfection from some of our key water or pump stations, especially in developed areas like down on Market Street. Last thing anyone ever wants is a chlorine release, accidental chlorine release, which can be deadly. And so we're upgrading those to on-site sodium hypochlorite, a much safer solution to disinfect the water. And then there's one of our water main replacements programs is 12 million for 4 aging neighborhood water mains. We can move forward. Wastewater pipelines, $198 million on sewer main rehabilitation and building new sewer mains. Facilities, that's the treatment plants, $68 million. And then governmental, again, work we do along with the city and state, TxDOT, for water and sewer pipes under our streets. So that's a big line item there to meet the consent decree, small and large diameter. That's a bucket of projects. Inflow reduction to reduce the I&I or infiltration and inflow into our sewer pipes. When they crack or break or whatever, water flows in sometimes through manholes, and that is just more water we have to treat, and we don't want to, don't need to. So sealing up those pipes will ultimately reduce the amount of projects we have to do at our treatment plants to treat water. And then CMOM, that's the ongoing work beyond the consent decrees 2025 and beyond, to continue to rehab old sewer pipes. A few more sewer main projects there. W2, that is the one on the west side in green, Eckert to Bandera. It's 2 miles of up to 40-inch sewer main. Some of these projects are advertising now too. So if you go to our website, and I'll give that to you later, you'll see where you can look at those projects. That's 14 million. E74 on the east side out there off I-10, $13 million. That's a 60-inch inline storage project. The E54 sewer main, that's the one up north of town in kind of pink color. That's about $32 million. That one was actually funded this year. It's a developer project, so a lot of hands involved in that. It'll probably slip to early 2022 award, but we will get that project out. A few more. C69 South Zarzamora, $3 million. The small capacity constraints, that's scattered around town some, but about $10 million. C10 Terrell Hills, that's the small project there. That's the blue dot kind of in the middle of near Alamo Heights and Terrell Hills there. Some some old sewer mains that some of them, I'm kind of familiar with that project because I live close to there. Under, like, people built houses or garages over the top of sewer mains, which normally we don't allow, but it happened in the distant past. So now we have to deal with it. We'll probably move some of those out to the street to avoid disrupting any of those buildings there. So let's go lift station projects. We do have, I mentioned lift stations earlier, about $12 million to rehab 15 lift stations at Port SA, Lackland. That includes SCADA work to network those into our automated systems so we can control it from remotely. That's part of the consent decree required by 2023. And then another one, $5 million to eliminate a number of lift stations near Port SA, again required by 2023. Water recycling center, that's the treatment plants, $50 million, all at the Stephen M. Klaus and Leon Creek, to do headworks, grit improvements. We're getting a lot of grit in the pipe, which is causing some early wear and tear to some of the infrastructure there. Digester mixing, there's very large digesters there, anaerobic digesters, and need to upgrade some of those because obviously those don't get better with age. Electrical system improvements, that project's been, we've been working to get that out for quite a bit of time to upgrade some of the old electrical infrastructure there, $26 million. And then Leon Creek, a number of different improvements to that treatment plant. That's the one you see in the lower right of the picture of the slide there, and $22 million at Leon Creek. So we have to keep all of our recycling centers running well and fully capable. So we end up having to put quite a bit of money into those two. There's an inside picture. It looks like a spaceship of one of the digesters. It's I always like that picture because it looks kind of cool. That's the digester project for $22 million there. Clean them, install new pump mixing systems, do repairs to the domes, liners, bases, do overflow lines, and then the electrical and SCADA work all will be done with that project, about $22 million. There's the electrical. You see some old duct banks and all that. Some of that is no longer maintained by the manufacturers or supported. So obviously it needs to be upgraded so we can continue to rely on it. Transition those from current control system to PLCs, programmable logic controllers, and those will interface well with some of our other infrastructures and our control systems. And this is phase 2 of a 4-phase program that right now is planned to conclude in 2025. So there'll be ongoing work on that. There's Leon Creek, the final phase of the upgrades, replacing the critical infrastructure of the plant, headworks, some old equipment there that needs to be demolished and cleaned up, do some repairs to the concrete, to the flow equalization basins. Those are large basins that when the flow gets too high, they divert it into there and then treat it when they have the capacity there too. And then filters, some new tertiary filters, and electrical improvements at the plant. There we go. Water resources. There's the projects this year. Our Artesia pump station is one of our very large pump stations. I think it's on the near southeast side. Rehab 3 wells there that provide water to our aquifer storage and recovery facility way down south. And then the pump station rehab to replace some aging mechanical and electrical components. I'll mention the ASR, the Aquifer Storage and Recovery Facility, briefly. That we have about, I forget the latest number, but it's a lot of water stored underground in far south tip of Bexar County. And what we can do with that, we store it in a sand aquifer, and then when we have periods of drought, when the Edwards aquifer is getting low and we need to reduce our pumping from that, we can switch and divert and pump water back from the ASR way south of Bear County, integrate it into our system, and reduce our reliance then on the Edwards Aquifer. And that helps us stay out of trouble with the Edwards Aquifer Association regulatory agencies, and reduce our reliance on the Edwards Aquifer overall. So I saw a question about Vista Ridge, and we just finished the Vista Ridge project. How does our program integrate with the Vista Ridge project? Well, it's all integrated. All of our water sources are closely integrated and controlled remotely too. So we don't just bring on one water source and it feeds one small area of customers. It's all integrated throughout the system. Okay, phase 3 service center program. The new Northeast Operations Center there, close to Judson and 1604, will provide administration, fleet services, supply for parts we need, and then fuel also. Obviously you can see the site needs to be cleared. The design build firm will begin the demo and fuel remediation at the existing service center to transition and move those fuel facilities over to the new one. I believe it's advertising now, so if you take a look at our website, you can look at the specs on that and hopefully get involved and help us out on that. There's a number of design contract opportunities right now under review: water main designs, production facilities, treatment engineering work order for small treatment jobs we need help with. And then we're also pay attention to our recycled water system to upgrade some of that infrastructure and do some engineering work on that. So there's some opportunities that'll be coming later this year. W9 and W52 are two large sewer mains on the west side. They're some of the largest and final projects we need to do for the consent decree. So those are going to be some, as you can tell, those are design dollars. So there'll be some fairly large or very large construction projects too. The CMOM, that's the sewer condition rehab. We aren't sure. We're intensively studying that right now because we're just ramping up on that. How much work we'll be able to put out later this year. It will definitely continue into 2022 and years beyond. So if you're interested in helping us out with some sewer condition rehab, pay attention to that. We'll need design and construction help on that. A couple of water pipelines. There's a couple of the larger ones. Project 3 I know is out along I-10. It's a large water main there. That's design. Again, those are design dollars. So those are some very large construction projects too. And then treatment facilities at Klaus treatment plant, electrical phase 3 and blower system improvements. Those are, we'll need help with facility design work too in the near future. We have some updated construction specs. They're on our website. Our utility service regulations that specify how we provide service to new customers is under final review now. It'll come out later this year. Those are all that's on our website, and I'll give you that link here in a moment. There we go. There is the link as promised. You can look there. You can, that's our saws.org. Look for the business center. You can get a login and look at our detailed specs on projects there. If you're interested in small, disadvantaged, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, there's a link at that same page where you can get information on that, on how to, and we definitely actively seek participation on the SMWB program. Let's move forward one. Looking forward, beyond this year, I mentioned the water risk and condition assessment. That'll give us some water mains for replacement in future years. Likewise, the wastewater master plan give us a 20-year look at what capital projects we need to do. The sewer main replacement through the CMOM program will continue indefinitely, forever. So obviously we have to continue maintaining our sewer system. And then the CIP plan, we're expecting it to average approximately $500 million a year. we do work, and that's a big part of my job, to reduce the or keep the plan manageable, make sure the right projects are in the right years, the most important projects, because that ultimately ends up some years, not this year or next, but we have to request rate increases approved by the city council. But we do work to make sure that we are optimizing our plan to reduce and mitigate the impact on our ratepayers. So, okay, I'm going to switch gears a bit here. This is talking about things we saw and experienced and had to manage during the freeze back in November. It's hard to imagine now that just barely 2 months ago there was snow on the ground and it was 10 degrees, but it did happen. So this, I don't think this was even the worst day. This was on Tuesday, but this shows where our water service was out. And just briefly, we did not, and I myself got involved in helping squelch the rumor that we had intentionally shut off water systems. What happened was, when the power goes out, we can't pump water from the aquifer and fill our tanks. And then as the tanks drain, the pressure goes down, and then you're out of water. So I think at one point I heard a statistic that 60% of the whole system was out of water. Okay, that's pretty dramatic. That's scary. Nonetheless, we did within a week get it everything back online. But at one point there, you can see on Tuesday, red was out of water, yellow was low pressure, blue was good pressure. That aligns pretty closely with where our pump stations were, and where where we could pump water, or in some cases just rely on water that was still stored in the storage tanks. And by the way, I'll give our IS folks a nod. They developed this in just a matter of hours to get really detailed views on where water was available and where it wasn't. So we were working full time throughout that week of the freeze, and most of us again did this working remotely from home. So if we can jump forward, there's some pictures there that we still have some items outstanding. This slide's actually from about a month old, but we're still working to repair some infrastructure. You can see on the left and middle, cracked large pipes and valves were just cracked because the water froze inside them. And like any freezing water, it expands, and even hard, steel pipes and valves, it would break them. And the one on the right there, water spewing out from the bottom of that above ground valve. Most of our water infrastructure, except for the tanks, is below ground, the pipes, but sometimes we have to have valves up above ground to be able to control it and shut it off. And some of those are pressure reducing valves too. So there was 3 critical pump stations. We did quickly help man temporary bulk water sites. I was at one of them myself at Shields Pump Station, and a lot of grateful customers came through. If you look in the bottom right picture, that's the mayor standing in the middle of some of our field crews. It was nice to see him come out and give some of those guys a in-person thank you and congratulations. And some of those guys worked 24/7 for a few days, with minimal rest. But we had people on duty 24/7 during the freeze to do what they could. And you see guys turning off valves there where the water had to be shut down to enable us to either reroute it to where it was most needed, or just to, in case of a broken pipe, we had to isolate that temporarily. So we were on duty throughout that week, whether we were working in the field or remotely, trying to keep the system running. So there's some more, just a quick slide I borrowed. Initial estimate was 14.8 million that we submitted to FEMA for reimbursement request to, again, mitigate the impact on our ratepayers. About $11 million in equipment damage to buy bottled water that we distributed, and materials and other almost 4 million. And then obviously some crews that were working 24/7, had to feed them 400,000. I'm proud of this one too, that our leadership established the CPR, or Community Pipe Repair Program. And a lot of us at SAWS and other community businesses donated over over $500,000 in contributions to support people who needed plumbing repairs. So we did our best to step up and help our community. This slide was dramatic too. An average February day, we'd pump 175 million gallons. Okay, winter day, you aren't watering, nobody's watering their grass. The previous all-time record for daily supply was a hot day in June, middle of summer, 378 million gallons. During the freeze, and a lot of this is people dripping their faucets like we told them to, and you know, broken water pipes and all, 441 million gallons on February 18th. So more than 2.5 times the average February day. So the freeze was dramatic. It definitely affected us, and we bounced back quickly. And by that Sunday, I believe that we had everybody in the whole system back online with water. So we did react quickly there. That's my last slide. I think I saw one more question. In light of the February 5th cyber attack at Florida, what is SAWS doing to increase protection of the system? Well, those are some IS things that I'm not very smart about, but we do have a robust IS team that monitors attacks constantly. In fact, when I happened to be at the water distribution site with one of those guys, and how often do you get attacked? And he goes, constantly, every day. So we're not immune to that. We do have the latest technology, and even working remotely with my work laptop, I'll get a message about every week or so. You need to reboot your laptop to get this latest security update. So we're on top of that. Thankfully, we haven't had any disruptions. Nothing serious, nothing that knocked us offline, and knock on wood, hopefully it'll continue that way. So we do our best to stay on top of those kind of threats. So that's my last slide. I'd be happy to entertain any more questions or comments or anything at all.
I have a question, Mark. So thank you for presenting. That was really informative. And I was wondering, does San Antonio have any plans to use the recycled water as a drinking supply? Because I know that we don't do that now, but in a lot of cities in California, Arizona, oil rigs, for example, also use that. And I was wondering if there are any plans in the works for us to start doing that.
We do not. I know it's been presented and suggested many times. Obviously, there's a kind of a stigma about that. I think they do it in El Paso, although it's filtered through their aquifer there. But no, we have adequate water supplies through 2050. It's up for consideration in the long-term water supply plan. That may happen at some point. I can tell you from being down at our treatment plant one time doing a tour there, they have a station where, you know, the water coming out of the treatment plant it's been chlorinated, and then they remove the chlorine because it's going into the river. They say it's safe to drink. I did take a sip of it. I'll admit it tastes a little salty, but it was clean. I lived, that was 2 years ago. So we may get to that someday, but for now, for the next through 2050, we have adequate water supplies where we don't need to go there.
I see. Thank you very much.
Sure. Good question.
Mark, if you answered it, I missed the answer. I asked if under this electric metering that you're doing when you're automating it, will that mean that you'll eventually consolidate all of the metering with the electric and the water?
I do not believe so. I'm pretty sure that SAWS and CPS will continue to have separate accounts and separate meters, but we will just run off their network. So just the signals, the electronic signals, will go through there. I see another question. How are capital improvements funded? Ratepayers. We get no tax dollars, occasionally a grant. Those are pretty infrequent, but when you pay your water bill, that pays for all of your service, including the capital improvements. We do get bonds and help from the Texas Water Development Board for low-cost loans, but we pay those back. So ultimately, it's the ratepayers that fund all their usage and capital improvements.
Mark, I have another question.
Sure.
I was wondering if there's any problem now or any lingering concerns about integrating the network that was formerly owned and controlled by Bear Met. Is there still any challenges going on with that?
The challenges are that and it is fully integrated and has been for several years, including all the dollars. The challenge there is a lot of their infrastructure was, I think I can confidently say, not very well maintained. And we have projects now in the current and future plan to go back and fix or update some of those pump stations. And I mean, I know in one neighborhood they had 2-inch water pipes to serve a large neighborhood. Well, that if you know anything about water pipes, we normally only do 8-inch and above. So like projects like that to replace old undersized water pipes with adequate water pipes to supply the neighborhood. So it's a challenge, but no less the challenge than maintaining any other infrastructure in our system at this point.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
All right, well, thank you so much, Mark. Really appreciate